Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mystery and Suspense panel.
Hi.
I'm Tempo. I am the author of the supernatural mystery series Windfall.
And I'm Kit Traden, one of the OwOmaCon staff, and I'm not a professional writer, but I have done a little bit of writing myself, so I'm excited about this.
Yeah, and we also are joined by
Hi,
Foxbrush.
Foxbrush Creations here, also known as Joey. I'll just be sitting over here doing the art.
So, but yeah, feel free to jump in if you have any, Joey.
Okay.
Don't leave us in suspense.
Okay.
So
no.
we are starting. So we're gonna. I would say we should probably start off by talking about the difference between mystery and suspense, like as genres. Like because people when they say oh I'm reading a story that is tons of suspense versus like I'm reading a mystery.
That's an interesting point. I guess when I was thinking about this panel, I was thinking as mystery and suspense as really interrelated ideas,
Okay.
where suspense is driven by a mystery, and suspense is kind of the holes left in the story by the mystery and the danger the protagonists encounter as they try and solve that mystery. So how do you define them?
No, I mean, and like so many things in literature, there are multiple correct ways of looking at it.
Of course.
When I think about mystery and suspense, I usually think of mystery as like a puzzle. Like mystery is a game you are playing, the audience is playing with the writer to like see if they can kind of like piece it together, detective fiction, murder mystery, things like that. And like
Okay.
suspense though is like a broader genre for me. Like, you could read like a historical account of something and you know how it ends, but at the same time, the exact sequence of events or like the, timing of different things will lead you to feel suspense. Like, you know that the Hindenburg crashes, but you don't know who, if anyone, is going to make it off. You don't know, like, exactly what's going to happen in sequence. Like, and that, to me, like, I wouldn't really usually call that a mystery, because it's not like,
Sure.
it's not like what's going to happen, it's how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So like, and you can totally have suspense in a mystery though. Like that's totally fair.
Yep.
So like, I guess we could argue that like mystery's kind of like a suspense, like part of the suspense genre.
Okay.
But you could also have like things like a spy thriller. Could have a lot of suspense, even if there's no mystery to solve. The person's just trying to like escape.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but yeah, like, what are your favorite go-to mystery and suspense stories, especially furry ones?
Yeah. I remember you asked me about this where we started. I think the four stories that come to my mind first are, and this is gonna be a little interesting because you kind of described mystery as a genre, and I've been thinking about it more as a literary technique. So these stories I'm about to list aren't necessarily mystery stories by genre, but they're stories that have elements of a mystery central to the way they're told.
Okay.
I think that Undertale really strings you along with a couple of really compelling questions about who some of the central characters are. I think that Zootopia is interesting because the first half of the story, where they're trying to track down what's happening to the predators, what's happening to all these animals that are going missing, that is a mystery. Then they solve the mystery at the halfway point. Judy accidentally becomes a big racist, and then she has to atone for that and figure out what's really going on, but you're given the answer to that question right away. And then the second half of the story, instead of being a mystery centered around this question we don't understand, it's more of, like you said, like a kind of like a thriller where they're trying to chase down the bad guy and prove their innocence.
Right. Okay. And like I think it's interesting that you said she becomes a big racist. Like
I mean,
I mean,
not
it's one of those things where
delicately.
like as we examine it, like it's kind of like
I
obviously.
would not word it like that.
Well,
Yeah, no, I did
like,
not word that carefully at
just,
all.
Well, just like no, I mean it's like valid, but like I think that it's worth considering too, like that there's someone who is super, actually super racist, and lots of things they do are racist, and then there's individual acts of like racism, whether you mean them or not.
Would this be
That's a good point.
speciesism in this case?
Well, yeah, and like Zootopia is pretty intentionally not like a one-to-one metaphor for like race. It's not like
Yep.
Mouse or something, where like, or Dumbo, where like a specific ethnic group is a specific species.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of like have some
Wait,
wiggle room there.
Dumbo?
Well, in like
The
the
crow,
black
yeah.
crows, yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Not a good look on Disney.
But yeah, like throw in your other ones so
Yeah.
that we have them.
The other two were your book Windfall.
Okay.
And that one's interesting because I think it's kind of two genres at once. The main genre is a romance. That's the note the story really starts on. It's the note that it ends on, and it's watching these two characters who have realized that they have fallen in love with each other, really start their relationship, and learn exactly what kinds of commitments they're able to give to each other and how to navigate the awkwardness of not knowing that. But it's also this mystery, and the mystery and the romance really play off of each other because as Max and Kylie try to figure out what's going on with Kylie's family history, why did so many of her predecessors go insane, is there something more to it, or is it something that's inevitably going to happen to her? And as they find out more and more what kind of danger they're in and what kinds of unanswered questions have lied dormant for all these centuries, it ratchets up the stakes for the romance as well, because they're really getting along really well. They're really happy to each other. But there's this threat that whatever is at the heart of this big question they're trying to answer, it could literally kill them. Or it could turn out that Kylie actually is just doomed to eventually have her mind fall apart on her, and that would make the relationship pretty painful. And so we're really invested in the mystery because of the romance. We're also invested in the romance because it's threatened by this mystery, and they play off of each other really well.
Yeah, I like that. I hadn't like thought about it as like a self-reinforcing thing, the two parts of it. But yeah, I like that. And like, it's. I'm glad you picked my book, because I'm not allowed to pick my books. But like, okay, okay, and so that was 3 of them or 4 of them?
Yeah, that was 3 of them. The 4th one, I'm gonna be a little harsh on. I really enjoyed Brand New Animal, but I think it does have some flaws specifically related to suspense and mystery that are worth talking about. It starts out by asking these really interesting questions. We meet Michiru. She is all of a sudden this Tanuki person, but she insists that she used to be a human, and that just doesn't happen. So immediately we're presented with this really big question: why did Michiru turn into a beast man? And that's a mystery. She then spends the rest of the show getting tied up in the conspiracy with Sylvasta Corporation, learning more about Shigeru Ogami and what his role in the city is. She has to deal with this relationship with her old friend Nazuna that has suddenly had all these complications thrown into it, and her turning into a beast man is clearly at the heart of all of these questions, and she has to figure that out. And so,
Right.
for 11 episodes, we have this really compelling mystery that we're trying to solve. But the last
Spoilers.
episode, I mean, then
Spoilers.
again, I'm thinking of this more as a mystery, as a technique.
Yeah.
Brand New Animal is not a mystery story, but it uses this technique of a mystery as part of the overall suit.
Yeah, totally.
This
Okay,
is
so let's go through yours, and then we'll go through the ones I had set aside, because I was going to talk about like detective, like mystery. I was going to talk about
Gotcha.
two different. I was going to double dip on Sherlock stuff, because I was going to talk about Great Mouse Detective and
Sure.
Sherlock
Oh.
Hound.
Why didn't I think of Great Mouse Detective?
Well,
That is a good
like,
movie.
that's fine. We can cover different bases.
Oh my
and-
gosh. Thank you so much, Silver Gadamon, for the donation.
And then for suspense, I was going to talk about Wallace and Gromit: A Matter of Loaf and Death.
Okay.
And so, like, all right, but let's just do yours in order. So I really am into your idea of Undertale as a mystery.
Okay.
So you, spoilers, fall into the underworld as a human child, and there are monsters there. But like, who you are and who everybody else is in relation to you is only revealed like a tiny bit at a time, and the game
Yep.
like rewards you for hunting for clues.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the way I think about it is that, again, if a mystery isn't a genre but is instead a question that holds the answer to the story, there are two questions you're presented with right away in the first chapter. The first thing is, you start up the game, you walk into the first room, and you meet Flowey, and he tries and kills you. And there's this really intense encounter right at the beginning. And all of a sudden, you don't know who Flowey is. He's up to something, but you don't know what it is. Why does he want to kill you so quickly? Why does he show up after your encounter with Toriel and make fun of you for accidentally killing her the first time you encountered her? How does he know that happened? And there has to be more to that. The game pretty much promises you that you will learn more about Flowey later on. At the same time, before you fight Toriel, she tells you he, Asgore, will kill you. And it's such an uncharacteristically serious thing for her to say. And now you're wondering, who is Asgore? Why would he want to kill me? What am I getting myself into? And I think that those two questions, who is Flowey and who is Asgore, really drive a lot of the conflict as you move forward through the story.
yeah, and like having those questions makes you want to keep playing the game.
Yeah.
You know, you want to figure out the answers to those, and so you go, okay, well, what can I, where can I go that I haven't already gone, as opposed to if it were just, motivated by wanting to solve the puzzles, because, wanting to see if you can get through the next, bullet hell mini game, or whatever, or sequence of dialogue choices, like
Yeah.
that's ultimately less interesting.
Yeah, you want to play because you want to learn the answers to these questions. By the way, thank you for the donation, Lemon Drop.
And so, like, it also changes the ending of the mystery based on whether you are, good or bad. Like, if you are evil, it gives you. It turns out that you were Chara the whole time, and if you are good, basically that character doesn't feature in the game.
Yeah,
You're just some kid.
that's a good point.
And
The
so
answer to the mystery changes depending on what you do.
yeah, and like to me that's really interesting because then like somebody who played, imagine you had a friend who played the game going, "Oh yeah, like I totally beat all the monsters," and then you like befriended all the monsters, and you didn't. Neither of you knew anything else about the game. You would compare notes and go, "Oh wow, like did we play even the same game?"
Yep.
Um, and so like one element of mysteries is the ability to solve the puzzle before the answer, like before the media answers it. So, do you think
That's
do you think that uh like Undertale gives you enough information to figure out what happened to Azrael and Asgore and Toriel before it tells you? Like, are there enough clues around to give you the information? Old tapes and things.
that's really interesting that you asked that because, um, again, as I was thinking about these stories, what I noticed for myself is that, again, mystery as a technique as opposed to a genre. It's not necessarily that the reader needs to be able to know the answer to the mystery before it's revealed, but rather that the answer to the mystery is consistent with everything you revealed, even if the reader couldn't answer the mystery themselves until you gave them the reveal. And I think Undertale does both.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, the mystery of who is Flowey, who is Azrael, the game goes out of its way to give you all of the clues in the true lab right before the final boss. You go there, you find out about the truth of Alpha's experiments with determination, you find out about the truth of how Azrael died, and that's enough that you can put two and two together and figure it out before you face him.
Okay.
But the mystery of Asgore, that one's interesting because these characters you encounter along the way, some of them say he's an absolute monster, some of them say he's the kindest man they've ever met, some of them don't say anything about him themselves, but clearly have some kind of relationship with them that drives how they see you, and so you learn some about how Asgore must see you, and it's this really weird mix of contradictory information that's impossible to tease apart. And as you're walking down the final hallway to Asgore, you're wondering who the heck could possibly be the person who fulfills all of these descriptions I've learned about him along the way. Who could possibly be this serial killer and the kindest man in the world?
Right.
And,
He's Santa Claus to them, and he's also like, totally ready to kill you just because you fell into the monster kingdom.
Yep.
And yeah. Oh, here,
And
Joe, you can show this one. You can show this on screen so that people can probably guess what route the fan fiction I write about the series took. But yeah, like
yeah, but the thing about that mystery is that you can't guess who Asgore is. There's no way to guess this is who he is until you meet him. And when you meet him, you find out who he is, and the pieces click together. But they do click together. He really is the kind of person who both genuinely wants to kill you and genuinely wants to be friendly to you at the same time. And so the solution to the mystery is something where you couldn't understand the solution until it was presented to you because you weren't given all the information you needed. But it also makes perfect sense with all the information that you were given. There's nothing contradictory, and there's nothing that comes out of left field at the last second.
Right. And so, but yeah, I totally wrote like a post-pacifist run fanfic, and you can find it on my FA. But like, the thing is like viewing the story as a mystery is interesting because like it is set up like one, even though like we tend to just like think of video games that, especially like an 8-bit exploration video game, battle video game, as not really having a genre in that sense. We typically say, okay, well, here's a world that's full of puzzles and challenges and things. But it really is, that, and it does build up suspense. Okay, so what was the next one that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I guess really briefly my thoughts on Zootopia. Again, I said earlier, I think it's really interesting how Zootopia has a mystery that drives one part of the story, but the second part of the story is not driven by mystery. And I don't know, I don't know that there's necessarily the most we need to talk about that, but just, mystery isn't something that you have to have. You can write a perfectly functional story where you learn that all the predators are going insane because they're shot by a drug by a hitman at the beginning of the story, and then you're chasing down the hitman for the rest of the story, but you already know the solution. It's just whether or not you can act on that.
Well, yeah, like that would be more like an action story, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that would be, we know who this is, we're gonna chase them. They're running away and we're chasing them. That's like
Like Endgame, or the first one. What was the first one called?
Infinity War?
Infinity War. Thorn, he's
Yeah,
the bad guy.
we
got the things. We gotta beat him before he gets all the things, or people will go poof.
Right. And it sometimes I think people want to write a really convoluted mystery plot, but their particular story isn't set up for it, and there's no shame in just having it be not an actual mystery. You can just have tension and not have it be a mystery. There's a, let's see, like there's a speaking of anime, there's a show called Great Pretender out that is all about like what you like. They are gonna do a con, and it's never how will they succeed in their. It's not how are they going to succeed in the con. Are they going to be able to fool the person? They always fool the person. They always succeed. It's just the tension of following the least well-informed character in the crew as they try to con someone out of something. But yeah, like Zootopia is an interesting one to examine too, because it's all about like, the mystery aspect of it distracts us from the fact that it's a parable about tolerance.
Yep.
Like, if it, people, like, I would watch it anyway, because, it's full of furries. Yep. But, like, when people, when people watch a movie and the moral of it is really obvious and right in front of you, then people tend to go, oh, wow, that was pretty heavy-handed. That was pretty, preachy. But if you like put it inside of a show about, a show with a mystery in it, that's really interesting, and it's like more palatable to people. And it's also fun that the moral of the story in that mystery is that we can all get along, as opposed to a normal mystery would be like someone out there will totally kill you for your jewelry or your, secret invention or whatever it is. Yep. Your deed that you have for your land, or like that's usually like insofar as there is a moral lesson, it's usually like, oh yeah, I guess people are willing to poison you.
Yep.
And so
I think that's an important point, too, about if you're going to use a mystery, especially in a non-mystery story, I think something that's really important is to make the mystery something that ties into the core theme of your story. Don't just use it because a mystery is fun. Figure out what the main idea you're trying to communicate is, and then make the solution to the mystery something that reveals light on that. And I think Zootopia accomplishes this by... at the start of the mystery, we just have 14 mammals have disappeared. There's no clear relationship with this idea of treating people differently or not because of what their race what their species is, or how they're different from you. And that theme has been clearly established by Judy overcoming prejudice to become a cop at this point. So we know that's the theme. This mystery shows up. We don't see how it's connected. But as we go through the mystery, it gradually becomes clear that everyone who's gone missing is a predator, and they've gone missing because they attacked other animals. And now there's this question of, is there something fundamentally different about predators that means that we should be scared of them? And that is a question that directly ties into the main theme. And
Right. And like, let's connect that to, say, like, BNA, like in Brand New Animal, that's kind of the question too. Like, should we be scared of beastmen? And then they try to kind of do the same thing where they're like, oh no, you know, they rampage. When you put them too close together, they rampage, and they can't handle living in society. When really that doesn't seem to actually follow from what we've seen.
yeah, I think I'm going to jump off of that. I think that that is the problem that I have with BNA, is that when we get to the point where the story starts telling us the solutions to the mysteries about how Michiru became a beastman, the solutions to the mysteries don't follow from what we've already learned. Like you said, there's this, all of a sudden in the back end of the story, we start learning about this disease that causes beastmen to turn into monsters, and that comes out of nowhere. And if that were it, that would land better, but in the last episode they changed the villain's motivations, they give the main characters multiple really easy solutions to some of the problems facing them that weren't communicated beforehand. They changed a little bit of the information that we know about Shigeru Ogami in ways that don't really contribute anything to the story. And I think that...
Right. And my problem with that stuff isn't that, like, they want that they like, it's not that I object to having like a fun anime that plays fast and loose with its own lore, like, because I can totally enjoy a show that doesn't really care about its own lore, like,
Sure.
you know, Doctor Who does not care about its own lore outside of a single episode. You know, Jim Henson's Dinosaurs doesn't care about its own lore outside of a single episode. But like, or The Simpsons, they don't, like, they'll reference things that happened in the past, but they don't really care if it contradicts something. And so, like, you know, how could Homer possibly have had 400 different jobs? And so, you know, it's not my problem with BNA, because I liked BNA, and it's really
I love
cool
BNA
looking.
personally.
Yeah, I like
animation
BNA.
is
I think this is just
beautiful.
one aspect that wasn't executed as well as it could have been.
Right, I feel like if you need to either go
It's
big or
such
go
a
home.
short show, though. I mean, I think part of it is just like they probably just ran out of time, so they're like,
Wow.
okay, we gotta crunch this.
They could have had a little more time if they didn't have that baseball episode.
Yeah,
That's fair. That one was cute, though.
that baseball episode does establish some thematic material that they return to later, but it doesn't really advance any of the questions.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, okay, so like when I say go big or go home, I kind of mean like, if you're going to have a mystery front and center in your story, you need to make sure your mystery is really airtight.
Yeah.
You know, you need to like, there's an old piece of writing advice for mysteries where you write the ending last, so you know how the mystery is resolved, and then everything else can lead up to that. Or
Yep.
you write the
Ending first.
solution last, or the ending
Oh.
first. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you can, everything else can lead up to that, because BNA, like, if it just wanted to be like a goofy action anime, that would be okay too. Like,
Yeah.
I would also, you know, I would watch it just like I watch, I don't know, My Hero Academia. You know,
Sure.
My Hero Academia doesn't worry too much about like the secrets of All Might's past and stuff. It just basically tells
Yeah.
us.
The thing that gets me about BNA as well is that I think if they had just been willing to commit to lower intensity imagery in the last episode, everything was set up where I felt like, in episode 11, I felt like I understood the mystery, and I could see what the likely reveals were going to be in the last episode. And it wouldn't have, you know, there's a big final boss fight between two giant monsters, and the entire city is overrun with monsters, and I think they wanted that, but it was leaning more towards, I think there was a lot of mystery in Michiru's strained relationships with Shigeru and Nazuna, and the villain was this guy who was always thinking 20 steps ahead, but wasn't really in a position to fight himself. He was just always able to manipulate people into exactly where he wanted them.
Yeah, and like,
I think they could have found a solution to the mystery that was true to those elements, and it wouldn't have had big fights, but it would have had a lot of really tense character interactions.
and at the opposite end of the furry anime mystery genre is Sherlock Hound, where everything is wacky and outrageous, and every once in a while there's a really good mystery. Like the I think there are like 6 episodes of the show out of like the I think it had like 26 episodes that are like actually, because it's a Studio Ghibli TV series, and the ones that are like the first, I think it's the first 6 of them, or like there's like a spread of like 6 of them that are like in the original batch that have really good, like, interesting mysteries, and people are solving the mystery based on weird clue, like Holmes is solving the or Hound, Sherlock Hound is solving the mystery like with actual Sherlockian deduction, and the other ones are fun, but they're basically a bunch of action, like slapstick and action nonsense.
Sure.
Like, and that's okay. And I actually, I like it for different reasons than I like BNA, because
Sure.
it's wacky and weird and like doesn't take itself super seriously, and you can kind of just like grab an episode of it, and it won't like get you too stimulated to then go to bed if it's the last thing you watch at night.
It promises a different experience than BNA.
Yeah.
BNA
Man.
promises that these interactions with these characters, as they ramp up in intensity, is going to lead to some kind of truth being revealed and everyone dealing with that. And Sherlock Hound it promises you that you're going to have fun for 20 minutes, and then you can go on your day with a smile.
Right.
How
And
have I never heard of this, by the way? I'm a Studio Ghibli, like, obsessed individual, and I've never heard of this, and I'm a furry, and I'm so bitter
you should
about
check
that
it
right
out.
now.
Like,
Yeah,
sure,
no,
sure.
I looked it up just now. I'm gonna go watch this later.
Okay.
This has unfortunately been the first time I've heard of Sherlock Hound myself.
Yeah, no, Sherlock Hound is like came out in like the 80s, and it's like a proto Studio Ghibli movie, and so it's like really, really pretty a lot of the time.
Sure.
And yeah, like the characters are a little toony. Husketeer, someone else I know from the Furry Writers Guild, we have this like theory that since there's at one point a skeleton that we see that has a tail, that everyone has tails secretly, and they just don't show them because it's like uptight Victorian society.
I like that.
Yeah, and so anyway, but it's a super fun show. It has like the best, most action-based Miss Hudson. Like Miss Hudson is like a former stunt pilot who's like a
Holy
crack shot
cow.
with a pistol, and like she's like famous among pilots and stuff. She's always like driving cars recklessly. It's super good. But anyway,
Yeah.
so Sherlock Hound, but then like compare that to like Great Mouse Detective. Like Great Mouse Detective for me is leaning more towards suspense. Like
Yeah, I was about
know-
about to say that I was surprised you brought up the Great Mouse Detective because it's superficially a mystery, but again, we get the solution right away. We know about what's his face. I have seen this movie.
Radigan.
Radigan, thank you. We see Radigan right away. We know what he's up to.
Yeah.
But
Like
you're right. It does work very well as a suspense story.
right, and like there's not really any mystery about like how he's trying to pull off his crime, and how like, and whether or not Basil will stop him.
Yeah.
It's really just exactly like the sequence of events and stuff like that. And so, and it's
Yeah.
mostly like, tension in that scene where they're in the mousetrap, the elaborate
Yeah.
mousetrap. It's building up tension because you don't you know they're going to survive, but you don't know like what's happening. Like the impending danger is like looming. You don't know how they're going to get out of it, and like there's a certain degree of like emotional safety in knowing that they're not going to just get killed in the middle of the movie and it ends. And
Yeah.
and so like
Yeah.
like they're going to be okay, but also you're not sure how they're going to be okay.
That's a
And
good
to
way of
me,
putting
that's
it.
like right. You're managing exactly how much tension you're putting under, putting in the audience under, and
Yeah,
like
like a suspense. This isn't a furry suspense story, but like the modern not Sherlock Holmes, the modern James Bond movies. James Bond will survive, but everyone around him, the movies have proven that they're willing to just drop them down like flies, and so that's less safety than this kids movie gives you in the Great Mouse Detective.
right. And then like similarly, A Matter of Loaf and Death is like it's Wallace and Gromit, so it's like that claymation when we talked about in a previous panel. A Matter of Loaf and Death, like that like pretty early on that who the murderer is, what her plan is, what's happening, and it's all just like this dog who can't talk trying to save his human who's stupid. And like it's all about like, oh my gosh, what happened to the love interest dog? Is she okay? Like she also can't talk, so we can't like just have her phone and tell us that she's okay. Things like that. And like I I think that's neat because it uses this conceit that like the dog can't tell us, but the dog is smart. Like there's this weird
Yeah.
subgenre of like animal fiction. Like I'd hesitate to say it's furry, but it's basically like cat mysteries and dog mysteries where like
Like
the detective
Lassie
has a
trying
dog or a
to
cat.
get someone to go get Willie in the well.
Well, it sort of works like Lassie, and but like it's all from like the point of view of the cat or the dog.
Yeah, but just
And
that fact that the person with the solution can't communicate it to other people.
yeah, exactly. Like what's going on? Oh, well, I saw the murderer get away, but I can't tell you who the murderer is because I'm a dog. And so that's, somewhat furry, I would say. But yeah, like let's quickly like jump on to Windfall. So like since I wrote it, I can tell you all about it. So let's take that one apart in our last 15 minutes here. So like what is like what were so you just read Windfall, like the first one.
Yep.
So like let's talk about how we set up suspense in that story.
Sure.
So like what were the
boy.
first things that you noticed, and then I'll talk about the things that I like threw in there too. So like
Okay.
how did suspense get built in this story?
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll talk a little bit about the way you structured it, but then I'm gonna go and
Sure.
talk about one particular observation I made that I really appreciated.
Go for it.
So the story starts out again. The first couple chapters are focused on just the romance. The mystery takes a while to show its first signs of appearing. Max and Kylie meet up. They're having a great time. They're still just friends. Everything's dandy. But then Kylie reveals. Well, it doesn't reveal, but we find out without Max finding out that Kylie is hiding the secret. A lot of her predecessors in her family have gone insane, and it's like clockwork. Someone goes insane once every few years, and she thinks she's probably next, but she doesn't know where it's coming from or what's driving it or anything. And that's our mystery. So we have the mystery established, but we have very little information about it. As Max starts to find out about the mystery and help Kylie with it, we get two really interesting clues. The first is when Max goes out to throw away the garbage. He sees a couple of unnaturally fast and skitterish animals get into the garbage and run away. And we don't know what they are. They might not even be anything, but it's weird. And the other one, I don't remember what the other one is. There's something else similar to that that's just weird and inexplicable, and it just happens, and we don't have any more information about it. Oh, there are just these weird piles of feral deer bones in the woods as Kylie and Max go hiking through them. And they're just there, and they're spooky, and they're arranged weirdly, so something had to put them there. But that's all we know. As we go on, Kylie discovers these journals that her insane ancestors had written, and she learns more about what happened to them through them. They had these eldritch nightmares, they had these ravings about seeing through the thin fabric of reality, and they also mentioned these cursed shacks out in the woods. So Kylie and Max go find them. They find one of these shacks, and at this moment, which is halfway through the story, which is exactly where you want to go and put this moment that really ramps up the tension, they see two things. They find this weird eldritch artifact that they can't even see clearly when they look at it. And then they see this absolute shape-shifting monster just show up out of nowhere in the woods and absolutely eviscerate a deer in front of them. And they're right next to it. And it's this really intense moment where this thing appears, it can kill, it will kill, and our heroes are right next to it, and all of a sudden, for the rest of the story, you don't know when this monster is going to appear again, it's probably going to kill them, and they have to figure it out, or Kylie's going to go insane, and that's bad. And I won't get into the rest because that gets into spoilers, and everyone who's 18 plus at this convention should absolutely go read Windfall for themselves. But one thing that struck me about this story is that I'm pretty sure you did this on purpose, because it happened so just perfectly timed. There are two moments in the story where Kylie and Max share a really intimate moment that dramatically moves the relationship forward. The first time happens the night before they go out and see the monster for the first time. So this moment of the relationship being at their highest is followed immediately by the mystery being at its lowest. Then, at the end of the story, Kylie and Max have another one of these intimate moments where the relationship is completely solidified and they feel completely safe with each other in spite of the mystery. And so the relationship is at the highest point it gets in the entire story, followed seconds later by the climax and the point of highest tension in the entire story. I just really like how you tied these moments that are euphoric and horrific and just smash them right next to each other.
Yeah, no, that one was totally on purpose because it was supposed to like change the level of tension. Like the when you write a suspense story, it's all about adjusting the knob for how much tension the reader is under.
Yeah.
And so, you can't just I like to think of it like if you go to a concert, they like to play a slow song, a fast song, a slow song, a fast song. Because if they just played fast song, fast song, fast song, you'd get exhausted, like you'd be overstimulated, and you'd start to get kind of numb to it. And if they played just all the slow songs in a row, you'd fall asleep. And so, like, by contrasting these scenes, you can, like, kind of, improve the, how much of an impression it makes on the reader.
Yeah.
By having it be, like, okay, well, things were going great, and now something else is going terribly wrong. It's not like, because in like if you were trying to do that with just one story, if it was just a romance, you'd have to have something go wrong with the romance.
Yep.
But because it's both of those, you can have something go wrong with the mystery that, now they have to get into that, and it's, even though the romance is doing okay, they need to address this, and like it's because of their ability to work as a team and their trust in each other that they're able to like figure out the mystery and survive the book.
Yep.
And so, spoilers, they survive, and that's how there's a book too. But like, and so one thing that I worked on like a furry angle in this book was Max and Kylie are a really big husky and a really small otter. And so, like, Max, for example, can't go into some spaces Kylie can go into,
That's a good
and
point.
and like when they're in like the caves and stuff, like he can't
Thank you,
physically
Lemon Drop.
fit, and so he then like feels anxious about that because he can't actually follow her to help her. And meanwhile, Kylie's like, I don't care about the monster. I'll fight the monster myself. And like, you know, she is, you know, because she is a feisty otter, and Max is like kind of protective and like, oh no, no, you're very small. Like, um, and you know, there are things like that where like Max has different sensory perceptions than she does because he's a dog. So he
Yeah.
like smells and hears things she doesn't.
So like, what I think you're saying is that Kylie and Max have different strengths and weaknesses that
Yeah.
complement each other, so they have to work together as a team in order to get the whole picture.
Right, and like yeah, and so like there are totally times where like, you know, her knowledge of how otter culture works or her abilities as an otter just physically come up, and it's,
Yep.
you know, oh okay, like, you know, it turns out I can bite really hard, whatever it is, like I'm, you know, I'm an otter, you know, I can do these things, like those are all like, you know, contributing to their ability to survive this, because really like one of the main sources of tension in a supernatural thriller is the monster's really powerful and could totally kill you. What do
Yep.
you have that could stop that from happening? In this case, it's the fact that like they care about each other, they know each other super well, they know how to work as a team, and therefore, you know, and they know they can rely on each other, like the other one's not going to run away. And
Yep.
so, you know, that kind of stuff, like you know, she learns that, you know, like early on in the book, like she learns that he's not going to run away because she, you know, revealed that, you know, this family history of, you know, going insane,
Yep.
like that didn't scare him off, and therefore she can say, okay, well, that means that even the supernatural won't scare him off. And Max is basically like, well, it can scare us off a little bit. Like, we don't have to like go and poke it with a stick. And, you
Yeah.
know, and so like
Yeah.
having different attitudes, like if it was just Kylie, you know, then she'd just be like jumping headlong into danger. And if it were just Max, he'd be like really cautious.
Yeah, and there are a few cave-ins and portals to other dimensions that would not have ended well for her if that were the case.
Right, right. And to me that's a very like otter thing. Like,
Sure.
you know, otters are, you know, not known for their impulse control.
That makes sense.
You know, like a dog, you know, a dog can be like patient and like well trained. Like Max is very domesticated,
Yep.
you know, and you know, he's, you know, and so like having those characters bounce off of each other means that you can have them take the most interesting route through the story rather than just falling back on whichever of them, you know, like if they were both the same, you would have to fall back on, okay, well, they have to be cautious here because they're always, both of them are cautious
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
for them to stay in character.
That
But like,
also it also helps out the romance because that means that there's much more interesting dynamics between them.
yeah, like, and I actually, there are places I could have added tension in the book where I intentionally chose not to. So like, Kylie's mom approves of the relationship.
Yep. I did that that's a whole nother discussion, but I really did appreciate how, you know, most stories and what you're taught to do is they focus on the strongest sources of conflict they can, and everything is spoken subtext, everyone's trying to win every conversation, and everything is horrible as possible. And you just the relationship between Max and Kylie, and between Max and Kylie's parents, and Kylie and her parents, is all very positive. The conflict is entirely driven by the mystery. And we get to see
Yeah,
people at their best.
right, because right, exactly. Like that is the source of Kylie's strength as the main character to get through these problems and solve the mystery, is that people are supportive of her. You know,
Hmm.
like her mom doesn't want to acknowledge that this stuff has, the supernatural stuff is happening, but she is very supportive of Kylie and of Max, and like
Yep.
approves of their relationship because she sees it as being healthy.
Yep.
She's like, "Oh no, you guys are cute together. You should get together. Why don't you invite him to come out and talk to him about how you feel and whatever?"
Yep.
Whereas in a lot of other stories I've read, they would be like, "Oh, that's another source of tension. I could milk that for more tension."
Yep.
And I'm like, "Yeah, you could, but ultimately, like, I want to have this be like an ongoing, supportive thing where she, like, Kylie's mom likes Max and has her own like interactions with Max, and Kylie likes her mom and has her own interactions with her, and like,
Yep.
because like they are, Kylie and her mom are like written to be two people who have approached the supernatural stuff radically differently. To
Yep.
add, that's like, that to me is another fun source of tension in the book, because Kylie, looks at her mom, and her mom is like,
Thank you, Akira.
I have totally written off this magic stuff, and I've decided that it's all figments of my imagination and rumors and stuff, and I made it into, a TV show. I wrote it into a TV show, and that's how I process that information. Whereas Kylie is like, it's real. I'm going to find out about what's going on. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. So you don't actually know, even though Laura successfully survived it, you don't know how Kylie can survive it because Kylie isn't taking the same route.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. And also, I noticed that it prevented Kylie and Max from being able to reach several easy solutions to the mystery. Had they been able to involve other people in it, there would have been some really easy ways for them to deal with it. But due to the circumstances of their mom being skeptical and the city they're in just being notorious for all kinds of rumors that are obviously bunk, there's no one they can turn to who would believe them.
Right, and plus they were like actors on a show about the town being supernatural.
Yep.
And so if they told the world, hey,
it's a publicity stunt. It's
right,
clearly
this
a
is
publicity
supernatural.
stunt.
They'd be like, look, guys, we know you want to sell more of the DVD set, but like, really, come on.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Are you trying to get a movie out of the deal? Like, what's going on here? No, aliens are real. Monsters are everywhere.
One thing, we're just about out of time. We have, maybe about 5 minutes left. But one thing I wanted to discuss, to pull back more towards the mystery and suspense side, one other thing I noticed about Windfall is that the more we understood about the mystery, the more suspense we were in. And I really liked that. I think in particular we're building up this suspense at the first half of the novel, and the suspense is Kylie is afraid of going insane and succumbing to mental illness, and we're trying to figure out whether or not that's something that can be avoided, and if not, what we can do about it. And that's a source of conflict, but it's not nearly as severe as the source of conflict we're under when we see that there is a monster, it's very real, it's fine killing, and we have no idea where it is or where it's going to be next.
Right.
And that addition of conflict comes from learning more about the mystery, and it's such a severe introduction of suspense that it retroactively makes, if you reread the story at that point and you read all these scenes from the first half of the novel where Kylie and Max are happily hiking through the woods, looking around for whether or not they see anything mystery, and they're totally oblivious to the danger that you now know they're absolutely in.
Right, like they have been in danger this whole time, not just in the woods, but in town and just all kinds of places, and in their house, whatever. And they're like, "Oh crap, it turns out that I was looking inside for the danger when really the danger was outside of myself."
Yep. And I think that is, if you're going to do mystery and suspense, I think similar to how you want the mystery to be tied to the central theme of your story, you also want the mystery to be tied to the suspense. As we learn more about the mystery, we realize we're in more and more and more danger.
And when I wrote the book, I made sure to put in things that could lead you to the answer throughout the book.
Okay, I missed these, so I want to hear this.
So
But maybe not too many spoilers.
So if you okay, here's one.
Yeah.
The fact that that a certain person cannot handle spicy food is important. And we see that right away. And it's like a throwaway line, and then it becomes super important to the story way later. And so, but stuff like that, where like it's all, spread out through this story, like all these little clues are just dropped in there, like, oh yeah, this thing. And so if you reread it, you can put the pieces back together and say, oh, okay.
I think the one time I noticed that, I'm gonna try and be vague, but put in so you can tell me whether or not I understood it right. I got to the end of the story and I found out who done it, which character in particular I should have been scared of, and I immediately thought back to one moment earlier on. Thank you, Squeezy, where Kylie and Max were particularly vulnerable after one of their hikes went badly, and then they come across this character. And they interact with this character, oblivious to the fact that they're the
bad guy.
And as they're in that conversation, that character says a few things about just throwaway lines about how, being away from home for so long can just really weigh on you.
Yeah.
Okay, so like that's the kind of stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. Like, in retrospect, it makes sense, and that for me is what makes a story fun to reread or rewatch.
Okay.
Is, oh wait, I can go back and look at that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was all right here.
Yep.
I didn't realize. So yeah. But anyway, yeah. So, let's see, and then like specifically making like a suspense story furry.
This has been a fun conversation, but we are 3 minutes away from the next panel starting.
So, but yeah, like basically like try to make your details matter, that like your clues and how the mystery is solved. Try to make that matter, that it's being solved by furries. Like try to have it be that like characters' physiology and like instincts contribute to solving the mystery or get in the way of solving the mystery.
That's a good point. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into it, but that's something that Brand New Animal and Zootopia also do really well.
Right.
The fact that these characters are animals gives them abilities that they can then use to find clues that a human character would not have been able to find.
Right. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And so, anyway, all right. Well, good talking to you.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun.
Right.
Thank you so much.
With Tempo. He's going to be with us as we do the charity raffle. If you would like to have a spot in the raffle, this is your very last chance to get in on it before we close. Because once the next panel starts, we're not going to be taking any more submissions for the raffle.
And I see
thank
that we
you all
are,
so much to everyone who helped us reach $700. That's amazing.
We
really
going to be excited if we just reached $500. And thank you so much for getting us to $700. We really, really appreciate you all.
Yeah, like when I talk to people about furry conventions raising money, they're always like really surprised by how focused we are on charity work, because like the average comic book convention usually isn't too focused on it. Like they might have a thing, but it's usually not like a main event.
Yeah.
Like we have it. So yeah, like I'm always really proud when we can, include that.
Absolutely. Alright, I think we're going to go and get started on the closing ceremonies. Again, thank you so much for this conversation. I had a wonderful time, Tempo.
And thank you,
thank you for joining us.
Providing the art.
Sure.
Okay, we'll be right back in a couple minutes.
Yep, be back very soon.
Silver Gatoman, he bought me a coffee. Silver Gatoman, here is the song for thee. He likes to video all the panels at the cons. You should go and watch them whether they are short or long. Silver Gatoman, you video that's not a jibe. All of you go to his YouTube channel and like and subscribe.